My child. Stop scrolling for just a moment, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you at a strangely precise time. There is something unfolding behind the scenes of this story, something connected not only to love, but to money, worth, sacrifice, and a question your soulmate never expected to ask. They thought they were searching for a simple answer. They believed one conversation would settle a curiosity that had been quietly following them for weeks. But the moment they asked the psychic about your money, the atmosphere changed. The answer they received did not sound anything like what they had prepared themselves to hear. And what happened immediately afterward left them sitting in silence, wondering how much about you they had completely misunderstood. Stay here, beloved, because the most surprising part is not that your soulmate asked about your financial future. The deeper mystery is why they felt compelled to ask in the first place. Something had been bothering them. They had noticed little things about you, details that other people might overlook. The way you rarely spoke loudly about what you possessed. The way you seemed uncomfortable measuring people by status. The way you could carry enormous dreams inside you without announcing them to everyone around you. There was a contradiction they could not understand. At times, you seemed like someone who had survived seasons of limitation, disappointment, and uncertainty. Yet there was another quality surrounding you, a quiet confidence suggesting that your present circumstances were never the full story. Your soulmate noticed it before they knew what it meant. They noticed that you could talk about the future differently from most people. Even when life had given you reasons to become bitter, some part of you continued imagining something greater. You may have doubted yourself privately. You may have wondered whether certain doors would ever open. You may have watched other people move forward while feeling as though your own journey was taking an impossibly long route. But underneath those moments was something persistent. You kept rebuilding. You kept learning. You kept finding another reason to continue. And your soulmate began wondering where that resilience came from. At first, they told themselves it was simply your personality. Then someone around them made a comment about you. It was casual, perhaps even dismissive. They questioned what you could truly offer. They looked at visible circumstances and assumed they understood your entire future. Your soulmate did not like hearing it, but the word stayed in their mind longer than they wanted to admit. Not because they agreed, but because they suddenly realized something uncomfortable. They did not actually know the full story of your relationship with money either. That realization became a question. The question became curiosity. And curiosity eventually led them into a conversation they had never planned to have. In this fictional spiritual story, imagine the scene. The room is quiet. Evening light falls across a small table. Your soulmate sits opposite a psychic, uncertain whether they should even mention you. They had arrived carrying several questions, but your name kept returning to their thoughts. Eventually they leaned forward and asked something simple: what do you see around this person's financial path? They expected an ordinary answer. Perhaps stability. Perhaps struggle. Perhaps a vague prediction about work. Instead, the psychic became unusually quiet. Your soulmate noticed immediately. There was a pause long enough to become uncomfortable. The psychic looked down, then back toward them, as though trying to decide how to explain what they sensed without making it sound dramatic. Your soulmate's heart began beating faster. For one terrible second, they wondered whether the silence meant something negative. Had you been hiding financial trouble? Were you carrying responsibilities nobody knew about? Was there some secret problem approaching? But then the psychic said something your soulmate had not considered. This person has been underestimated. 4 words. That was all it took. Your soulmate stopped moving. The psychic continued. They explained that your story was not primarily about how much money you had today. It was about your relationship with value. Somewhere along your journey, you had learned that appearances could lie. You had seen people possess plenty and still feel empty. You had seen others have little and still carry extraordinary generosity. Because of that, you had developed an instinct to separate money from identity. You wanted security, yes. You wanted abundance, yes. You wanted the freedom to breathe without constantly calculating every decision. But you never wanted money to become the thing that decided whether you deserved respect. Your soulmate felt something tighten inside their chest because suddenly several memories returned at once. They remembered conversations where you changed the subject when someone tried to measure success only through possessions. They remembered moments when you encouraged someone without expecting anything back. They remembered the strange way you sometimes seemed more interested in what people were becoming than what they owned. And then another memory appeared, one your soulmate had almost forgotten. There had been a moment when you could have made yourself look more impressive. You didn't. You could have exaggerated. You didn't. You could have allowed someone to assume you had more than you did. Instead, you remained quiet. At the time, your soulmate interpreted that silence as uncertainty. Now they were beginning to see it differently. The psychic leaned closer and said, "They have learned how to survive without turning survival into their identity." Something shifted. Your soulmate had entered that room asking about money, but the conversation was becoming about character. And this is where the story becomes deeper, beloved, because the psychic had not yet reached the revelation that would truly shake them. They continued by describing a pattern around you. A pattern of delays followed by sudden movement. Seasons where effort seemed invisible, followed by moments when several things could change close together. Your soulmate listened carefully. They wanted specifics, but the psychic kept returning to one theme: preparation. Why preparation? Your soulmate asked. The psychic answered, because some people receive opportunities before they have the wisdom to carry them. This person has been learning the wisdom first. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. That sentence touched something personal. Perhaps they had once judged the pace of your life. Perhaps they had wondered why certain achievements had taken longer for you. Perhaps they had compared your journey with someone else's without ever telling you. They suddenly felt ashamed of every silent comparison. What if the slow seasons had not meant failure? What if those seasons had been shaping qualities that would matter later? Patience, discernment, discipline, compassion, the ability to recognize false promises, the courage to begin again after disappointment. Your soulmate thought they had asked whether you would have money. The psychic was telling them something much more unsettling. They were being asked whether they would recognize your value before the evidence became obvious. That question landed heavily. Because love is easy to claim when everything is already shining. It is easy to admire someone after the world applauds them. It is easy to believe in a person once every visible sign confirms that belief. But what happens before that moment? Who recognizes the seed before the tree? Who respects the dream before there is proof? Who remains genuine when there is nothing to gain? Your soulmate suddenly realized that this reading might not be testing you at all. It might be testing them. The room seemed smaller. The psychic asked, "Why did you really come here?" Your soulmate hesitated. They could have given a comfortable answer. Curiosity. Concern. Planning for the future. But none of those explanations felt complete anymore. Finally, they admitted something they had barely admitted to themselves. They were afraid. Not necessarily afraid that you would fail. They were afraid that you might succeed in ways nobody expected, and that when your life changed, you might also change how you saw them. There it was. The hidden truth beneath the question about money. Your soulmate had been wondering whether your future would still have room for them. That fear had been growing quietly. They had watched you become stronger. They had watched you recover from things that once wounded you. They had noticed you becoming more selective with your energy. You were learning not to chase people who repeatedly misunderstood you. You were learning that love without respect could exhaust the heart. You were learning that being kind did not require accepting every behavior. And your soulmate could feel it. You were changing. Not into someone colder. Into someone clearer. That frightened them more than they wanted to admit. Because clarity changes relationships. When a person finally understands their worth, they stop negotiating for basic consideration. They stop shrinking to make other people comfortable. They stop believing every delay means they should surrender. They begin choosing with intention. Your soulmate sensed that transformation happening inside you long before they understood it. And suddenly their question about your money made sense. They were not simply wondering what would enter your bank account. They were wondering what would happen when you finally stepped into the life you had spent so long preparing yourself to carry. Would you remember them? Would you choose them? Would you look back at the moments they doubted you? Would you remember who encouraged you and who quietly questioned you? The psychic did not answer immediately. Instead, they said something unexpected. Money will reveal people around this person. Your soulmate's expression changed. What does that mean? The psychic explained that financial change does not automatically change a person's heart. Sometimes it simply exposes the hearts already surrounding them. People who ignored someone may suddenly become interested. People who underestimated them may rewrite history and claim they always believed. Some may approach with affection that looks sincere but is secretly attracted to access, opportunity, or status. Your soulmate swallowed. For the first time, their own motives came under examination. Why did they love you? Would they still want you if nothing dramatic ever changed financially? If your path remained simple, would their heart remain steady? And if your life expanded beyond everyone's expectations, could they love you without becoming possessive, insecure, or competitive? Those questions followed one another like thunder in the distance. Then came another revelation. The psychic described an old emotional wound around money. Not necessarily one dramatic event, but perhaps years of watching what financial pressure could do to people. You may have seen stress enter conversations. You may have learned early that security could disappear. You may have promised yourself privately that if you ever reached a place of abundance, you would use it differently. You would create peace rather than performance. You would help without humiliating. You would protect what mattered. You would remember what difficult seasons taught you. Your soulmate became emotional. Because they knew enough about you to recognize pieces of that description. Suddenly, behaviors they once considered strange made sense. Your caution. Your planning. Your occasional anxiety about wasting resources. Your ability to appreciate small gestures. Your determination to become independent. Your reluctance to ask people for help unless absolutely necessary. The psychic said, this person does not simply want wealth. They want freedom from a feeling they never want to experience again. Your soulmate whispered, what feeling? The answer came softly. Powerlessness. And something inside them broke open. They realized that behind some of your ambitions was not greed, ego, or a desire to impress anyone. There was a deeply human longing to become capable of protecting yourself and the people you love. You wanted choices. You wanted to know that an emergency would not destroy everything. You wanted to give without secretly wondering whether generosity would leave you vulnerable. You wanted to wake up without carrying the invisible weight of uncertainty. Your soulmate had never understood that. They had seen the dream. They had not seen the reason beneath it. And once they saw the reason, their feelings toward you became more complicated and more tender. But the psychic was not finished. They reached for a card, turned it slowly, and their expression changed again. Your soulmate noticed. What? The psychic remained silent. What did you see? Still nothing. Now your soulmate leaned forward. The psychic finally said, there is another person connected to this. Your soulmate's stomach dropped. Another person? Immediately their mind began racing. Was someone interfering with your finances? Was someone using you? Was someone planning to approach you? Was this about an old relationship? A relative? A friend? A business connection? Someone you trusted? The psychic raised a hand. Do not assume betrayal, they said. This is more subtle. Then they explained that someone around you had already noticed your potential. Someone had seen a quality in you that even you occasionally forgot was there. This person may have recognized your intelligence, creativity, persistence, leadership, or ability to turn difficult experiences into something useful. They may have said something encouraging that you brushed aside because you were too focused on surviving the present. Your soulmate immediately became curious. Who? The psychic would not say. Instead, they offered another sentence. The important question is not who sees their potential. The important question is who tries to influence what they do with it. Now the reading felt different. Your soulmate sat back. There was no frightening prophecy, no promise of magical riches, no guaranteed fortune waiting on a specific date. What emerged instead was something emotionally sharper, the possibility that your future choices would force you to become discerning about whose advice you trusted. And beloved, this is where the story reaches the secret your soulmate was not prepared to confront. Because they suddenly remembered something. A conversation. Someone had recently spoken to them about you. At the time, it seemed harmless. The person had asked what you were doing with your life. They had asked about your plans. They had asked whether you were financially stable. They had even laughed lightly while suggesting that your ambitions might be unrealistic. Your soulmate had not challenged them strongly enough. That memory now burned. They remembered remaining quiet. They remembered giving a vague answer. They remembered wanting to avoid conflict. But sitting across from the psychic, they suddenly wondered whether their silence had betrayed something important. Not your bank account. Your dignity. The psychic watched their expression and seemed to understand. You're remembering something, they said. Your soulmate nodded. Someone underestimated them in front of me. And what did you do? Silence. That silence answered everything. Your soulmate looked down. For the first time, the reading had nothing to do with predicting your future. It had become a mirror showing them their own past behavior. They had cared about you. Perhaps more deeply than you knew. But had they always defended you? Had they always believed in you when belief required courage? Had they protected your name in rooms where you were absent? The questions became uncomfortable. And yet that discomfort began changing something inside them. Your soulmate realized they did not want to become another person who recognized your worth only after the world confirmed it. They wanted to become someone who could say, I believed before the applause. But could they truthfully say that? Not yet. That truth hurt. The psychic then said something that your soulmate would replay repeatedly afterward. If you care about this person, don't focus on what they may someday have. Pay attention to who they are becoming while they build it. Your soulmate looked up. The psychic continued. Because what they are building internally may be worth more than what they eventually build externally. Those words changed the entire reading. Your soulmate had arrived wanting information about money. They were leaving with questions about love. What is loyalty when there is no reward attached? What is support when success is uncertain? What is partnership when two people are still becoming themselves? Can love celebrate someone's growth without fearing it? Can love remain gentle when ambition becomes intense? Can two people build without secretly keeping score? Your soulmate suddenly understood that the future they had been wondering about could not be measured only in numbers. If there were ever to be a genuine future between you, it would depend on whether both of you could become safe places for one another during change. Then the psychic looked at them and asked one final question. Do you know what this person would do if they had more than enough? Your soulmate paused. Strangely, they did know. They pictured you helping someone quietly. They pictured you taking care of people you loved. They pictured you creating something meaningful. They pictured you finally allowing yourself to rest. And then they smiled. It was small, almost involuntary. They would probably give too much away, your soulmate said. The psychic smiled too. Then perhaps you know them better than you think. That moment softened something. For all the uncertainty, your soulmate realized their feelings had never been about numbers. They did not fall for a financial prediction. They had fallen for your way of carrying yourself through uncertain seasons. Your humor when things became difficult. Your ability to care even when you were tired. The private dreams you revealed only when you trusted someone enough to hear them. But then came the part that changed the atmosphere once again. As your soulmate prepared to leave, the psychic suddenly asked them to wait. There was something else. Something they had almost decided not to mention. Your soulmate slowly sat back down. The psychic's voice became quieter. There is a decision coming. What kind of decision? One involving opportunity. Your soulmate's eyes narrowed. For them? The psychic nodded. But it won't look important at first. That detail caught their attention. The psychic explained that sometimes the turning points in a person's life arrive disguised as ordinary moments. A conversation. An introduction. An idea. An invitation. A decision to finally take seriously something they have postponed. The significance may only become visible afterward. Your soulmate immediately thought of you. They knew how many times you had delayed something because you wanted the timing to be perfect. They knew there were dreams you rarely discussed because disappointment had taught you to protect them. They wondered whether one of those dreams was closer to movement than either of you realized. Then the psychic added something else. When that moment comes, this person will hear two kinds of voices. Your soulmate listened closely. One voice will remind them of every reason they might fail. Another will remind them of everything they survived to reach that moment. Your soulmate's eyes filled with emotion. And which one will they listen to? The psychic answered, that depends partly on who is standing beside them. The room went silent. Your soulmate understood immediately. This was no longer merely about your decision. It was about theirs. What kind of voice would they become in your life? Would they amplify fear? Would they question your capability because your dream made them uncomfortable? Would they discourage you because your growth threatened their sense of control? Or would they become the person who looked at you when doubt entered your eyes and reminded you exactly how far you had already traveled? Your soulmate left that room carrying a question they had not entered with. Not, will this person become wealthy? But, if their opportunity comes, will I have the courage to believe in them? And beloved, something happened after they left. Something the psychic could never have predicted. Your soulmate opened their phone. They went through old conversations between you. Messages. Small exchanges. Words they had forgotten. They found moments when you had hinted at dreams without fully explaining them. Moments when you joked about the future because speaking seriously about it felt too vulnerable. Moments when you admitted that you wanted more from life, then quickly changed the subject. Your soulmate reread those messages differently now. One particular message stopped them. It was something you had said a long time ago. Perhaps you did not even remember sending it. But they did. Because suddenly it seemed to explain everything. You had written something about wanting to reach a place where you could finally breathe. Not impress people. Not prove everyone wrong. Just breathe. Your soulmate stared at those words for a long time. Then they understood. Your dream had never simply been money. Your dream was peace. And they had almost missed that completely. Their eyes filled with tears. Because they began wondering how many times you had smiled while carrying worries you never explained. How many times you had encouraged others while privately questioning your own path. How many nights you had calculated possibilities in your head while telling everyone you were fine. How many times you had watched something you wanted slip beyond reach and quietly promised yourself you would try again later. They suddenly wanted to speak to you. Their fingers hovered over your name. They almost sent a message. Almost. But something stopped them. Because they realized they could not simply say, "I asked someone about your money." That sounded wrong now. Too shallow. Too incomplete. What they actually wanted to tell you was that the conversation had forced them to see you differently. They wanted to apologize for every moment they had silently underestimated the weight you carried. They wanted to tell you that they understood why certain things mattered to you. They wanted to ask about the dreams you had stopped discussing. They wanted to know whether you still believed those dreams were possible. Most of all, they wanted to know whether there was still a place beside you for someone willing to learn how to believe properly. But they did not send the message. Not yet. Because another memory had surfaced. And this memory changed everything. Your soulmate suddenly remembered the identity of the person who had made that dismissive comment about your future. The same person who had asked strange questions about your plans. The same person who seemed unusually interested whenever your name came up. Your soulmate had once assumed it was ordinary curiosity. Now they were not so sure. They went back through another conversation. Then another. A pattern began appearing. The person had asked about your work. Your ambitions. Your financial plans. Whether you were planning a major change. Whether you had recently received an opportunity. Why? Your soulmate's heartbeat quickened. There could have been an innocent explanation. They knew that. They did not want to jump to conclusions. But after everything they had heard, the pattern felt impossible to ignore. Then they found one message. A message they had forgotten completely. The person had written something about you that seemed meaningless at the time. Now it looked entirely different. Your soulmate stared at the screen. Their expression changed. Because the message suggested that this person knew something about an opportunity connected to you before your soulmate did. Something you might not even know they knew. And suddenly the psychic's mysterious warning returned to their mind. The important question is who tries to influence what they do with it. Your soulmate read the message again. Then once more. Their hands became still. Because tucked inside those ordinary words was a detail they had overlooked the first time, a detail connected to your future, your choices, and possibly the very opportunity the psychic had described. Your soulmate immediately began typing a message to you. They stopped. Deleted it. Started again. Stopped again. Because before they could tell you what they had discovered, they needed to confirm one thing. They needed to know why this person had been asking about your money long before your soulmate ever walked into that psychic's room. And when your soulmate finally asked them directly, the response they received contained one sentence that made every previous conversation suddenly look different. A sentence your soulmate was never supposed to connect back to you. And that sentence revealed that the real secret was never about how much money you had. It was about what someone believed you were about to become. The moment your soulmate read that sentence, something inside them went completely still. Not because the words were threatening, and not because they revealed some frightening secret, but because they confirmed something your soulmate had been slowly beginning to understand. Someone had been watching your potential far more closely than anyone realized. The message was simple enough to be overlooked by anyone else. Yet after everything the psychic had said, it carried an entirely different meaning. They don't understand yet how valuable what they're building could become. Your soulmate read it once, then again, then a third time, feeling the weight behind every word. Because whoever had written that sentence was not talking about what you possessed today. They were talking about what you were creating, what you were learning, what you were quietly becoming. And suddenly your soulmate realized the psychic's reading had never really been about predicting money. It had been pointing towards something much deeper, the moment when your hidden preparation would finally meet an opportunity capable of changing the direction of your life. Stay with this, beloved, because the next discovery did not arrive loudly. It arrived through a tiny detail your soulmate almost missed. They went backward through the old conversation and noticed that this person had repeatedly asked questions about you shortly after certain moments in your life. Whenever you mentioned a new idea, somehow this person became curious. Whenever you seemed excited about a possibility, questions followed. Whenever your soulmate spoke positively about your abilities, this person would gently introduce doubt. Nothing obvious. Nothing dramatic. Just little comments. Are you sure they can handle that? Maybe they're expecting too much. Some dreams sound better than they work in reality. Individually, the remarks seemed harmless. Together, they formed a pattern your soulmate could no longer unsee. And that pattern forced your soulmate to confront an uncomfortable truth about themselves. There had been times when they allowed other people's uncertainty about you to influence the way they saw you. They had never stopped caring. They had never intentionally wanted to discourage you. But human hearts can absorb doubts quietly. A sentence heard repeatedly can become a question. A question repeated often enough can become hesitation. And hesitation can slowly affect how someone behaves toward the person they love. Your soulmate began remembering moments when you needed encouragement and received caution instead. Moments when you shared an idea and they immediately listed everything that could go wrong. Moments when you were looking for someone to say, "I see why this matters to you," but instead heard, "Are you sure this is realistic?" They closed their eyes because suddenly they understood something painful. Perhaps you had not stopped sharing certain dreams because you had stopped dreaming. Perhaps you stopped because you became tired of defending your dreams before they had even been given room to breathe. That realization reached somewhere deep inside your soulmate. They remembered the way your energy sometimes changed after certain conversations. You would begin excited, speaking quickly, allowing your imagination to open, and then something would happen. A question. A skeptical expression. A practical warning offered too early. Slowly your voice would become quieter. Never mind, you might say. It's probably nothing. And your soulmate had believed you. They had assumed the dream had passed. Now they wondered how many dreams you had simply taken back into the privacy of your own heart. This fictional heavenly message carries a deeper truth beneath the mystery, beloved. Sometimes people do not need someone to predict their future. They need someone to stop making their future smaller. Your soulmate was beginning to understand the difference. They had spent so much time wondering whether your financial path would become secure that they had overlooked the person doing the building. You. The one learning through mistakes. The one collecting skills nobody applauded. The one adapting whenever circumstances changed. The one surviving disappointments without turning every disappointment into an identity. Your soulmate suddenly realized that whatever happened financially, you had already developed something no reading could put a price on, the ability to begin again. That realization made them return to the psychic's words, "This person has been underestimated." The sentence sounded different now. Before, it had felt like a prediction about other people. Now your soulmate understood that it included them. They had underestimated you too, not cruelly, but subtly. They had confused a delayed result with a limited future. They had mistaken your silence for uncertainty. They had looked at seasons where little seemed to happen and assumed little was being built. But some of the strongest foundations are invisible while they are being formed. Your soulmate reopened your old messages. This time they were not searching for clues about money. They were searching for clues about you. They found conversations from difficult seasons. There were messages where you made jokes while clearly exhausted. Messages where you encouraged them while dealing with your own uncertainty. Messages where you said things like, "I'll figure something out," even though you probably had no idea how you were going to do it yet. Your soulmate noticed something extraordinary in those words. You rarely promised that life would become easy. You simply kept believing you would find a way forward. And suddenly they remembered the psychic saying that your greatest financial gift might not be luck at all. It might be adaptability. That word stayed with them. Adaptability. The ability to lose one path without losing yourself. The ability to change direction without believing you had failed. The ability to learn something new when the old way stopped working. The ability to look at disappointment and ask, "What can this teach me?" instead of only asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Those qualities were not dramatic enough to impress everyone immediately. Yet your soulmate could suddenly see why they mattered. They began imagining you years from now, not as some fantasy version surrounded by impossible riches, but as someone calmer. Someone more secure. Someone able to make decisions from choice rather than desperation. Someone whose success was measured not only by money, but by time, freedom, peace, purpose, and the ability to care for what mattered. And strangely, that image moved your soulmate more deeply than any prediction of wealth could have. But then another thought entered their mind. Would they be there? That question changed the temperature of everything. Because your soulmate realized they had been so focused on whether your future would change that they had avoided asking whether they were emotionally prepared to grow alongside you. Loving someone through transformation requires a different kind of courage. If you became more confident, could they celebrate rather than feel threatened? If you became busier building something meaningful, could they communicate rather than immediately assume distance meant rejection? If you earned more than they expected, could they remain secure in their own identity? If you failed at something important, could they comfort you without secretly saying, "I told you so"? These questions humbled them. And for the first time that night, your soulmate stopped thinking about what you might become and started thinking about who they needed to become. That was the true shock of the psychic reading. They had gone seeking information about you. They had received a mirror. Your soulmate looked again at the message from the person who had been asking about your plans. They decided not to accuse them of anything. Instead, they asked a careful question. Why do you think what they're building could become valuable? The response came several minutes later. Because I've seen something similar before. Your soulmate frowned. What do you mean? Another pause. Then the person explained that something about the way you thought, worked, created, communicated, or solved problems reminded them of people who had eventually turned small beginnings into meaningful opportunities. They had not been trying to sabotage you. At least not intentionally. Their skepticism had come partly from their own experiences. They had watched ambitious people fail. They had seen people become consumed by unrealistic expectations. And when they looked at you, they saw both potential and risk. This revelation complicated everything. Your soulmate had expected a villain. Instead, they found another imperfect human being. And that mattered. Because the story was not becoming a simple battle between people who believed in you and people who did not. It was revealing something more realistic and more emotionally powerful. Sometimes people can recognize your potential and still project their fears onto it. Someone can care about you and still give you advice shaped by their own disappointments. Someone can warn you with good intentions while unknowingly teaching you to doubt yourself. Your soulmate understood now that discernment would be essential. Not every warning was jealousy. Not every encouragement was wisdom. Not every doubt was betrayal. Not every promise was trustworthy. The real question was whether you could learn to hear advice without surrendering ownership of your decisions. And beloved, perhaps that is one reason your journey has sometimes felt lonely. There are decisions nobody can make for you. Others can advise you. They can support you. They can challenge you. They can love you. But eventually there comes a moment when you must decide whether the next step belongs to you. Your soulmate began to understand that if they truly loved you, they could not become another voice trying to control your path. Their role was not to decide your future. Their role was to know you deeply enough to help you remember yourself when fear made you forget. That realization created an unexpected tenderness. They opened the unfinished message to you again. This time they began writing differently. I've been thinking about something you told me a long time ago. They stared at the words. Then continued. You said you wanted to build a life where you could breathe. Their finger hovered above the screen. They wanted to send it. But another question stopped them. What if you asked why they were suddenly bringing this up? Would they tell you about the psychic? Would you feel uncomfortable knowing they had asked a stranger about your financial path? Would you think they cared too much about money? Would you wonder whether their feelings depended on what someone predicted? Your soulmate suddenly felt embarrassed. Because now they could see how the original question might sound. They had not intended to reduce you to money. But intention did not erase impact. They realized that if they spoke to you, they needed to begin with honesty. So they deleted the message again. And wrote something completely different. I owe you an apology. Their hearts started beating harder. This was no longer curiosity. This required vulnerability. They continued writing. There were times you shared things with me and I responded with doubt when you needed me to listen. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. Maybe sometimes I was actually protecting myself from believing in something I couldn't control. Your soulmate stopped. That sentence surprised even them. Because it was true.